tonight's plan is we're going to read through Rosa's latest filing. She filed an amendment to her complaint for a lawsuit against FINRA regarding MMTLP and them shutting off trading and us losing 2 days of trading and the shorts never being forced to close. So buckle up, Buttercup, because that's what we're going to be piling on here. Well, I see you guys are chit-chatting and throwing questions in there. We'll read through this thing. There's a lot of stuff we can sort of skip because we don't really need to. It's just sort of laying out the stuff we already know. But we'll get to the new things that she threw in there. So it shouldn't take too long, even though it's like 97 pages. Oops. Okay. All right. Bam. Chrome it. Go there. There. All right. You guys ready? You ready? Hell yeah. Okay. So, brings motion for leave to amend complaint. So she's moving for her. She's like saying, "Hey, court, all this new stuff is showing up. I need some permission to amend my complaint." That's right off the bat what she's saying. So in it, she posts the rules for amending such things, standard relief, blah blah blah. Okay. We get to the amendment itself. And the parties, relevant parties. So she's going to name off all the companies involved, FINRA, etc., their CEOs and brokers and legal counsel and all those things. She states who Knightsbridge Hydrocarbon is, what Torchlight is. It's just all of our definitions. We can kind of pass by these things. Talking about how the Securities and Exchange Commission implemented Reg Show in 2005 to regulate short sales. So basically, we're going to end short selling, make it short selling. And they just created a giant loophole for them to sell naked. And she has to define all these terms for everybody. So we can keep going, talking about failures delivers, what they are, dividends, regulatory agencies, QSIP numbers, all these definitions, blah, 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 blah. So, and then she talks about the schools of thought on short selling, which is, the main thing is short selling should be able to exist because it's a way of keeping companies in check. If they're misbehaving and they're doing bad things, we should have the right to sort of use the market to go, no, don't do those things. But they get used to hurt us a lot more. Oh, I should post the link for this sucker so you can follow along at home. There you go. The link's in the chat. Get it. All right. Okay. So then she goes to the facts, talking about the merger and combination and becoming a non-tradable share. And then in October, all of a sudden, it becomes traded by a bunch of freaks. And then she talks about the S1s and all the S1s that got filed. So file those S1s, blah, blah, blah. Going to take the company private. And then this is the new stuff. So the emails from the SEC, which were received in a Freedom of Information Act request, they talk about emails between SEC and FINRA people, which we got a hold of, and sort of what's happening with Knightsbridge in this thing. So the final prospectus was filed, and this was for, hey, we're going to make this company private. We're going to remove the shares from the DTC, and we're going to make them paper shares. So you guys have to close all your positions. And all the brokers went, oh, shit, we're going to make sure everyone closes their positions. And everyone knew they're going to have to close positions because if you can't provide the shares, which stands as the dividend for the MMTLP shares, you must close your position. There's no way around it. You cannot avoid not closing that position because you didn't provide the dividend and you're required to provide the dividend. Also, you can't hold a short position in a company that can't trade, especially a naked short position, because a naked short position requires you to be able to identify shares that are available to trade. And if the company's private and it's not in the exchanges, you cannot identify any shares that are available to trade. So On or about December 5th, 2022, FINRA employee Sam Drady emailed that we are blue sheeting both MMET and MMTLP as we speak. See attached here too as Exhibit A. Therefore, requesting accounting, also known as a blue sheet, on MMTLP are available to satisfy plaintiff's request. So she's saying they're talking about the blue sheets, about who's short on what and how many shares exist. I want those. You need to give those to me because it pertains to this case and how I was injured. On or about December 6th, 2022, the defendant filed a day list event, attached here too as Exhibit B. So this is the day list they did on the 6th, and then they amended it on the 8th. They changed the canceled to deleted, and then that night on the 8th, or I guess early in the morning on the 9th, they issued the halt. Those some bitches. Oh, grr. Okay. And then talk about how many shares they say there should exist and how many they think exist. And sort of like the how the market makers and brokerages must recover borrowed shares and reconcile the short selling and failure to deliver positions, because we were on the thresholds list for 40-something days leading up to when they canceled it, which means naked shares were being sold, millions of them every day, and no one was closing positions. They were just rolling it all over. Tons of it was market makers doing GTX, doing the sales. Okay. So we're still kind of laying things out. She explains also that the placeholders provided from brokers vary because each broker handled it differently, and that they are not shares, nor are they Series A per shares attached to an asset of the company or dividend. So they're just placeholders. They're just like, we don't know what the fuck we have. We're going to put some placeholders here and hope everyone forgets about this. That's kind of where they all were. Months of failures to deliver due to saturation of the market and dilution of shares by broker shorting without enforcement or regulation has allowed a company that defendant has no legal regulatory authority over to suffer loss and dilution of interest, and has led to a failure to ascertain shareholders and a failure to call a shareholder meeting, among other legal harms incurred due to defendant's actions. So she's saying FINRA screwed this up. And then, because the company went private, FINRA's like, we don't have a problem. It's not in our purview anymore. It's out of our hands. It'd be like a sheriff taking a wanted subject and then shoving them across the county line, be like, I don't have jurisdiction anymore. Sorry. I know he killed that family over there, but it's out of my hands now. That's kind of what the way they're treating it. Talking about the Sherman Act violations, talked about this stuff before. The Sherman Act prohibits any contract combination in the form of trust or otherwise, or conspiracy to restraint of trade of commerce. So basically, Sherman Act says you can't use your regulatory authority to just arbitrarily stop trade that harms people, right? Concerted action of conspiracy is required for the purpose of Sherman Act violation. Cites the thing here. And determining whether Sherman Act violation occurred, the concert or conspiracy of separate economic actors pursuing separate economic interests such that the agreement deprives the marketplace of independent centers of decision making must be present. Another court case. Defendant acted in concert with market makers, brokers, and parties liable for shares to loan to unreasonably restrain trade by preventing retail investors and stockholders from participating in open market trade during trading days. Defendant did this while allowing covert market activity that suggests shares on loan being returned at artificially reduced value and bargain for exchange due to defendant's market interference and unlawful restraint on trade. So basically she's saying, hey, FINRA was in on this. They knew all the legal shady stuff that was going on, and they acted to protect the legal participants and not the illegal ones. So, conspiracy. Right? Defendant's halt on trading and subsequent replacement of Series A preferred dividend shares entitled to oil and gas assets for placeholders and failed delivery of ownership interest in NextBridge demonstrates the dilution of stock due to short selling and naked short selling that remains outstanding due to defendant's unlawful restraint on trade. More than 125 days have passed since defendant's unlawful restraint on trade in NextBridge hydrocarbons still has not been able to ascertain shareholders. Brokers still have not distributed shares of NextBridge hydrocarbons as required to holders of MMTLP and have not registered shares as required with AST. AST has indicated to the plaintiff that brokers have made requests in excess of 200 million shares, while only 165 million were authenticated in the prospectus and Nextbridge Charger Carpet. So the brokerage is like, hey, can I please register these? And AST is saying, not all those are real. So no, you can't register all of them. And the broker's like, grr, I want to get this off our books and get it into your problem. And AST is like, we can only take the real thing, man. We can't take that fake crap. You got to close out the fake crap if you want to send us shares. Aiding and abetting violation of Section 10B of the Exchange Act, Rule 10b-5 thereunder. Plaintiff hereby incorporates and alleges paragraphs 1 through 65 as fully set forth herein. So she's saying 1 through 65 is all the stuff that's happened. It lays out a pretty clear case. These guys screwed the pooch. And now we're going to get into some more nitty-gritty. Section 10B of the Securities Exchange Act prohibits the use of any manipulative or deceptive device or contrivance in contravention of such rules and regulations as the Commission may prescribe. The Securities and Exchange Commission filed the attached prospectus indicating a close of market date to end trading before the deletion of Series A preferred MMTLP stock. The defendant has acted in convention to defraud investors. It is unlawful use It is unlawful by use of any means or instrumentality of interstate commerce to employ any device, scheme, or artifice to defraud or engage in any practice or course of business which operates to defraud. So she's saying the act of shutting down trading was deliberate and specific to defraud the retail investors who either A, couldn't get their real shares, or B, couldn't sell to close out short positions that had to be closed out so others could get their real shares. And that they knew it. And they knew it all along. And she's going to lay out further down how the SEC was emailing them like, oh my God, there's a lot of fraud going on. And Fernando went, delete. That's what they did. All right. The defendant issued a daily list notice indicating continued trading until 12/13/22, less than 12 hours before implementing a total halt of all quoting and trade in an effort to conspire and defraud investors from retaining an open market value for recovery of loaned and borrowed shares by market makers and brokers with short selling positions not yet closed. And there were a lot of them. Only 199,500,000 shares are to be taken to Nextbridge by allowing borrowing of shares by market makers and brokers without creating the avenue to allow them to be bought back. The loans on the shares are outstanding, and retail investors are entitled to collect the outstanding loans. And if loaned shares are not purchased back, Nextbridge stands to face liquidity of stock. Okay, so the 199 million is from the 165 million that should exist. And then the near 40 million that are going to be given to McCabe for his portion of ownership of those oil fields. They're going to make it all under the umbrella of Nextbridge. And then McCabe gets those tens of millions of shares. So it puts us around 200 million. Okay, so there's an argument for injunction. So she wants them to stop doing something. Right? Plaintiff hereby incorporates and alleges paragraphs 1 through 70 as if fully set forth therein. The granting of preliminary injunctive relief at the outset of litigation is one of the most drastic tools in the arsenal of judicial remedies. And yet the defendant has used this drastic tool against shareholders unilaterally by way of their halt. So she's saying that this injunction that she's filed for to get them to cease the halt and trade for 2 more days, you have to get the courts to do it, and that they arbitrarily did it by halting without using the courts whatsoever. And it's one of those very drastic things you need the court approval to do. Plaintiff's burden for establishing the right to preliminary injunctive relief are A, the likelihood of irreparable harm and the unavailability of an adequate remedy at law, B, the substantial likelihood of success on the merits, and that the balance of equities tips in his favor, and that an injunction is in the public interest. So she's going to lay out that the injunction's in the interest of everybody because we've been harmed, and that there's larger forces at play that harm everybody across the market. Therefore, they should grant her injunction. Plaintiff has a substantial likelihood of success on the merits due to the imminent spinoff and the halt serving as a catalyst to prevent any alienation of shares prior to the spinoff, locking shareholders into private company prematurely with no avenue to alienate their holding. Basically, some people were holding the stock, looking for a squeeze, wanting to sell, maybe not necessarily wanting to roll over into this private company. and they had 2 more days ahead of them to make this choice, and they took that choice from them. That's one of the injuries. Plaintiff has a likelihood of irreparable harm by the replacement of preferred dividend shares by non-security figures rather than shares in NextBridge, and the likely dilution of NextBridge stock by over-leveraged short selling of market makers, which is what they did. Defendant has limited authority to create limited 10-day halts due to extraordinary and unforeseen circumstances. The defendant has been apprised of the circumstances, the floating shares, the outstanding shares, the brokers shorting the stock, the naked shorts throughout the several months of filing since July 15th, 2022, and thus creating a halt to prevent any further trade before the imminent spinoff is unreasonable and a conspiracy to enjoin the illegal activities of market makers and brokerages. She's just saying straight up, they put their thumb on the scale of justice and ruled in favor of the criminals. That's kind of what she's saying there. But they knew of all the malfeasance. They knew of all the trouble. They knew of all the illegal trading and the illegal short selling, the naked short selling and everything else. And they still ruled to benefit their buddies at the market makers and brokerages. Defendant further created blue sheets of MMTLP trade activity as indicated in email of December 5th, 2022, and is yet to impose regulatory consequences on the bad actors or institute a solution for shareholders or NextBridge hydrocarbons. So basically, they knew about it, they wrote it down, and they still haven't done anything to make it right. The issuance of a preliminary injunction in this matter will not cause loss or inconvenience to the defendant, as the actors defendant is shielding are subject to suffer the economic loss, but the defendant is not a shareholder and holds no standing to suffer loss, economic or otherwise. She's saying, since they are a self-regulatory agency and they are not involved at all with holding or selling or borrowing or lending the stock, they cannot say, we'll suffer harm if you rule against us, because any harm that happens is going to be the liability of the broker dealers, the prime brokers, the hedge funds themselves, the market makers, all those guys who did the actions. They're just wielding FINRA as their blunt instrument to continue to commit their crimes. And FINRA's like, oh, woe is me. How can I fix this? I can't. It's so hard. And she's like, no, you can fix it. You just hit a button, dude. The issuance of a preliminary injunction will serve public interest. The state of Florida has an interest in transparency of private corporations serving in lieu and on behalf of public organizations and protection of it for investors from fraudulent mishandling by those entities. The plaintiff and other retail investors have millions of shares with intention to trade and transfer brokerages until the notice date of deletion. Time is of the essence, as the total trading days remaining have been corrupted and a contractual obligation to create a spinoff has been imposed in less than 14 business and trading hours. These are the only remaining hours for shareholders to liquidate their shares before joining the private company NextBridge Hydrocarbons. She's saying they ruined our opportunity to either to make our choice in the market. Plaintiff's request for an accounting. So she's saying now that we've established that paragraphs 1 through 81 are bitchin', we're going to move on. So under Florida law, in order to obtain accounting, a party must show either 1, a sufficiently complicated transaction and inadequate remedy at law, or 2, the existence of fiduciary relationship. That's the case. There is no argument to be had that is not a complicated transaction. There are several entities involved with mostly hidden market activity, and it is the duty of the defendant to regulate, oversee, and overhaul much of the complexities that are faced in this case. She's saying, yes, this is complicated. There's all sorts of stuff being borrowed and sold and moved around and swapped, that because this is complicated and you are the regulator, your job is to look at those blue sheets and show it to us. Show us what happened. Let's paint a picture, right? Plaintiffs have sought an equitable remedy because no adequate remedy exists at law. Florida courts have defined fiduciary obligations broadly to extend every possible case in which there is a confidence reposed on one side and the resulting superiority and influence on the other. The rule embraces both technical fiduciary relations and those informal relations which exist whenever one man trusts in and relies upon another. Basically saying, there are sometimes uneven transactions where someone has all the power and someone doesn't. And the way to make that equal is the one who doesn't have all the power has access to the information of the one who does have all the power. And that there's specific laws in Florida itself, not just federal laws, that gives us that equalizing of the playing field. Self-regulatory organizations such as the defendant, have a fiduciary duty to all retail investors as they take upon themselves the burden of regulating the industry, to which they are an investor themselves. So he's just kind of nudging them right there, saying, your mission statement is to protect we investors. And you happen to be an investor as well, because you've got several $billion in a giant fund to help fund your entity. The defendant has a fiduciary duty to allow for the fair and equitable trade at market value, and has instead facilitated the protections of broker-dealers at the expense of shareholders whom they are charged to protect, thus entitling the plaintiff to an accounting under Florida law. She's just reestablishing, like, you got to show me what was going on. Defendant is not entitled to immunity. The defendant is immune from money damages as a result of investment loss or of retail investors. However, this does not give the defendant sweeping immunity to be beyond judicial reach. This is the key argument of FINRA, is that they've got immunity. We got just blanket immunity, can't do anything with the courts. When the law specifically says they have immunity from monetary damages. You can still take them to court and make them do things, but you can't make them pay, right? The defendant serves two functions. One, as a self-regulatory organization to promulgate and enforce rules governing the conduct of its members, and two, as a billion-dollar private investment organization whose net income in 2021 was $1.4 billion, with 90% of assets being cash and investments, and whose CEO received a salary of $3.12 million in 2020. So she's showing these guys rich. Come on, man. That's basically what she's saying. The duality of the function and a private business interest, such as interest in trading volume and market activity, courts should review the pertinent conduct and determine whether the conduct was protected by immunity claims. Courts must examine the invocation of absolute immunity on a case-by-case basis. So she's laying this out because NASDAQ obviously said they're immune, and DL Capital was able to say, no, not in this case. Given the significant protection, courts have cautioned that the doctrine is of rare and exceptional character. So it's basically saying, if you got immunity, it needs to be rare and very specific. Until shareholders can be ascertained to exercise shareholder rights or reconciliation occurs, shareholders are deprived with no remedy is available. To completely deprive shareholders of judicial remedy would be an extreme use of doctrine. Basically saying, we've got tens of thousands of people who've been injured here. We want answers, and we deserve answers. And to give immunity from giving answers to this one regulatory agency does not serve the purpose of anyone, does not serve anyone's benefit. So, give us our damn remedy, is what she's saying. When an exchange engages in conduct to operate its own market that is distinct from its oversight role, is acting as a regulatory entity, not a regulator, as found in Amrit Securities Incorporated versus FINRA. To determine whether the defendant was acting in their official capacity or as an investor-regulated entity working in a concerted effort to suppress the fulfillment of contractual obligations of shareholders, an accounting must be furnished. So she's saying FINRA has no immunity whatsoever if they aren't acting as a regulator in this instance. And we can find out if they're acting as a regulator or not by giving us this accounting. We can see exactly what side they were working on this. Were they working as a regulator of the industry, or were they using their power as a regulator to benefit their private equity side? Right? And we don't get an answer unless we get our accounting. In a landmark Supreme Court case, Axon Enterprise Incorporated versus FTC, decided April 14th, 2023, just a few days ago. Attached here to as Exhibit H, district courts have jurisdiction when preclusion of that jurisdiction could foreclose all meaningful judicial review. The court ruled that here and now injury, which is impossible to remedy when the illegitimate administrative reviews occur, would cause any remedy to come too late to be meaningful. When asked before the Supreme Court whether the district courts may hear cases from those seeking to enjoin the administrative processes against the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Federal Trade Commission, the Supreme Court has ruled the answer is yes. The Supreme Court has ruled in effect the SEC is not beyond judicial review before the district courts. And thus, the defendant entity under purview of the SEC is not beyond reach of this honorable court. So, she's saying that this court, the Supreme Court, ruled just a week ago, 1 week ago, that you don't have immunity from everything, and that if there's injury, it gets determined in the court. All right. That's awesome. That's only a week ago that decision got published. Amended motion for preliminary injunctive relief. Relief comes now, plaintiff Rosa to will, and hereby moves this court pursuant to blah, 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 for preliminary injunction enjoining financial industry regulatory authority and officers, agents, servants, employees, attorneys, and all persons in active concert or participation with them or any of them from acts of furthering conspiracy to commit fraud, scheme, device, and artifice to defraud all retail investors of the stock, preferred A share, dividend, MMTLP of Metamaterials Incorporated. In support thereof, state the following. Plaintiff hereby incorporates and alleges paragraphs 1 through 87 as if fully set forth. So she's saying 1 through 87 again, bomb.com. By canceling trading after instituting a halt against retail investors from 12/9/2022, FINRA has effectively usurped the prospectus created by the Securities and Exchange Commission, creating their own timeline for a transition of shares. Basically saying, FINRA, your daddy, said it's going this way, and he went, no, 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 no. Plaintiff is requesting an extension of cancellation of Series A preferred MMTLP to implement 2 more trading days to restore the rights of shareholders that were impacted by FINRA instituted halt. Plaintiff is requesting MMTLP not be deleted until a full accounting of MMTLP shares is provided, evidencing no liquidity has occurred to the stock of NextBridge. Prayer for relief. Petitioner respectfully requests this court to enter the order granting 1 preliminary enjoined financial FINRA from deletion of MMTLP cross brokerage accounts, a full accounting of all blue sheets to be disclosed, evidencing the integrity of stock value of MMTLP and thus NextBridge Hydrocarbons, award plaintiff for reasonable attorney's fees costs pursuant under 15 U.S. Code 15A and other applicable laws, granting such that other relief the court may determine is just and proper. Signed away. And then she has a declaration, an affidavit from Howard Akoff, who did the Freedom of Information Act request, who got the emails. And then she includes the emails here. We've all seen these emails. Looks like MMLT Matters has now hit my fraud team's radar screen. This was December 5th, 2022, and seemingly a lot of other radar screens as well. I know you have spoken to Patty Kazamates on our general counsel's office, but was wondering if it made sense to my fraud team to have a conversation directly with you and your folks working on the matter so we are not duplicating efforts. We're looking at 2 issuers from a fraud manipulation angle and, in fact, blue sheeting both MMAT and MMTLP as we speak. If you think a comparison of notes is worth a quick call, let me know. Good day and time. I can set up a Zoom. Feel free to let me know, or anyone else should be included. Thanks. So they're saying, we know there's fraud happening, and we're letting you know a day before you issued your corporate action on the data list, right? Exhibit B, talking about, this is the data list stuff. Okay. I'm not sure what all these other ones are for. Talk about thresholds list, how many days, threshold list, threshold list, threshold list, threshold list, threshold list, and so on. This is, what is this? How many shares traded? And short, the borrowing, how many shares are available to borrow, and they weren't doing any borrowing for a lot of it. Okay. And Superior Court, District of Columbia. Oh, this is the Emervit Securities one, so that's that thing. And then she probably had, I think she has the most recent one from, April 14th, 2023, so from last week. This was the Supreme Court ruling that got published. So that's a cajillion pages that we don't need to read these. She summarized it well enough for us. So there you have it. There's the quick rundown of Rosa's most recent filing. She just slapped the shit out of them. It seems like FINRA brought a bunch of stupid to a smart fight, and I hope Rosa's on an amazing experience for someone of faith. She is on her Hajj to go to Mecca and do her pilgrimage, which is, it's the pinnacle of one's life oftentimes. So congratulate her on that. She'll be coming back to the U.S. at some point, and when she gets back, I'm going to beg for her to come back on the show and chit chat with us. I'm not sure how much she can talk about, but we're gonna try to bring her back. Good. Oh shit! I forgot to turn that off. Crap, I was on my I got distracted by a dog's bone. All right, off. Okay, so what was I talking about, Monkey Butt? Oh, yeah, Rosa's on the Hodge, and so when she comes back, hopefully we can chit-chat with her and meet up and get some more info.